Oh, you know exactly what time it is. It is Highway with Tom Bray on Road Gang Radio.
On the Highway with Tom Bray, one of the other long-running segments, one of the segments I've been doing since I have been here, one of the great gifts that Dave Nemo gave me when I took over on the other platform on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays was that he gifted me a couple of segments. One of them was On the Highway with Tom Bray. The fellow from J.J. Keller has arrived, lean and mean and on the scene. Glad to have you here, my brother. How you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself, Jimmy?
Not bad. We can actually take a little bit of a moment here, by the way. This is interesting, too, because you've been in this racket for a long time. You've been doing this gig for a long time. And one of the things that, I thought was important about John Maley's podcast is, look, there's a lot of people saying a lot of explosive stuff about both borders, about immigration policy. I would not have brought any of those folks on. I'm not here to increase the temperature. I realize that if it bleeds, it leads. You can get a lot of clicks and a lot of support that way. It also doesn't do service to the men and women who drive for a living and do the listening over here. John's podcast is a little bit different because we can say a lot of things about Bob Costello, and there are places where I really differ with Bob Costello in regards to his view of the economy. It was like I'm going to be really blunt about Bob. It was like pulling teeth to finally get Bob to say that there was a lifestyle issue that was also at play in regards to how truckers were treated was part of the deal, that it wasn't just about more pay, but that people weren't being treated properly. He came out and he said it. He finally said there's a lifestyle issue at play here. But Bob's an honest broker. And Bob is not an alarmist, and nor is John Maley. So when they did that podcast, when Bob Costello says they are targeting people engaged in cabotage, I have this crazy idea I might listen to it. And that podcast is really, how shall I say, measured. It's not explosive, meaning that they're not looking. They didn't mean to get all those clicks. You know what I'm saying? They didn't set they didn't set out to be like, okay, so how can we maximize our podcast coverage and how many people are listening and following? Because, the next podcast goes right back to, talking about rates and capacity and all other kind of stuff that they deal with. But it does have an impact. And let me ask you a question. You did a lot of driving in the early days. Not so much now because, you have, I'm not sure if it's I'm not sure if it's an upgrade or a lateral move. It depends on who you talk to. Did you ever get a chance to drive down on the border, ever, on either border? Were you ever a guy who actually crossed the border or drove down in any of those neck of the woods?
Crossed the northern border regularly. It's part of living where I live up in the northern tier. So I worked a lot with Canadian carriers, Canadian freight, Canadian borders, broker borders, you name it. At the southern border, I used to do border swaps in both Texas and California, where we would meet a Mexican carrier that would take our trailer across and load it. They'd bring us a loaded one. We'd give them our empty, and they'd run it down to the manufacturing plants that were just across the border to load for us. And then, like I said, I'd take the loaded one I just picked up and bring it back to wherever to unload it. So I never crossed into Mexico, but I did the border swaps back in the day. This goes back to the 80s, by the way. And the problem with cabotage is, and always has been, actually catching it. And that's where you talk about where the rubber meets the road. Okay, how do you know that Canadian driver and that Canadian carrier doesn't have legitimate U.S. DOT authority, is not a U.S.-based carrier? This is getting sophisticated, and there's ins and outs, and there's problems here and problems there as far as trying to figure out, is this actually cabotage? Or is it a U.S. carrier? Is it a Canadian carrier that has a U.S. sister company, and the U.S. sister company is now doing the move? The Canadian driver just brought it in. Now the U.S. carrier is doing the move. It's very difficult to catch on the road. Officers aren't that well trained in this area, and they don't have the sophistication. I don't want to use that word. That's the wrong way to put it. They don't have the tools to be able to catch it on the road in a lot of cases. So that's where the problem lies, is trying to figure out how do we actually catch this when it's happening, and then how do we make sure it stops? Because so long as there's money to be made doing it, human nature is going to win. People are going to do it.
Well, and the other thing is, and this is speaking from a law enforcement standpoint too, the other thing that people always forget, I'm going to go really in the left field here, Tom, because actually this is all going to segue very nicely into what you want to talk about, because we are talking about the new and changing DOT world. what is interesting about this, too, is that people don't realize that the infamous crime bill of 1993, the one that a lot of people screamed to the high heavens about, it actually worked. The bigger thing it was I've always said that President Clinton at the time couldn't get a jobs package passed. So what he did instead was he passed a crime bill that put 100,000 more police, 100,000 more firemen, and about 50,000 more EMTs out in the field. What is that? That's a jobs bill. And for the first time in a long time, you can actually say that the crime rate's precipitous drop wasn't because we put everybody in prison. The crime rate's precipitous drop happened because we had more people doing law enforcement, more people doing mental health checks and all that kind of stuff. One of the other problems with catching cabotage is you just pointed it out, it takes time. I mean, it takes time. I mean, you've got to basically, if in fact you suspect somebody of doing cabotage, you then have to go through every single step of the way you talked about. Do they in fact have a sister company? Do they have a parent company? Is this in fact playing itself out like this? And if it is, you've then wasted an entire day of law enforcement when you could have maybe caught a bad hombre on the road trying to figure this out. We don't have the law enforcement agents, enough of them, present in the field to really do the kind of diligence you need to do to figure this out, correct?
Yeah, and that's the big challenge. And to try to catch it afterwards, the volume of freight, that's one of the issues you deal with either border, because we are in an international economy, whether we like it or not. And just the volume of freight that's coming across the borders by truck, it's literally, I would not be the person that has to sift through all of that customs paperwork and then the follow-on shipment paperwork from the carrier and the follow-on destination information to try to figure out which ones involve the driver that came in, ran a load in the United States or multiple loads in the United States, and then ran out. Because it would be a daunting task.
Well, yeah,
and so it's one of those things.
Yeah, you've got to target. You got to target the company, because the driver might have been a one and done, and then he drifts into the ether, and then they send somebody else over, and you start the whole. You can't target a driver because you'll never catch them. Or by the time you realize what's happened, they've faded into the woodwork. I mean, that's fair too, right?
Well, the other issue is if you caught the driver, to use the crime term, you've caught the foot soldier. You haven't caught the lieutenant or anybody further up the chain. And what they'll do is they'll just get another foot soldier. They'll just put another driver across the border to do the same thing. So that's where the concept, we're going to stop these drivers. That's not going to stop it. That won't even slow it down. You've got to get to the people that are actually controlling it and doing it. That's where you need to get. And it was mentioned earlier, you got to make it hurt. I mean, there's got to be a fine significant enough or punishment significant enough that they say, this just isn't worth doing anymore. We're losing big time doing this. So long as it's just their driver gets a ticket and placed out of service, the companies that would be willing to do cabotage aren't going to care if they lose a driver. They'll just replace him.
Yeah. And that's it. And by the way, before we actually pivot into the new world of the DOT, that is such a great point that I want every single listener to keep in mind. Yes, it's easy to be infuriated with an individual human being behind the wheel. That human being often is just that, a human being looking to simply improve their lot. And it happens over here across the border as well, too. If, in fact, somebody is hiring droves of illegal aliens or immigrants who are here illegally, they are, in fact, getting rid of them isn't the problem. There are always more people who come looking for that. It's actually sticking it to the people who are willing to lay out the money to let these people do this. And until we fix that problem, until the teeth is directed at the people who are at the top of this is going to go on. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment, because it's like a lot of things in our industry. Some companies look at the drivers and throw away, and when I joined the industry in the 80s, we were in the midst of this rampant deregulation, and the industry was changing literally daily. I mean, it was quite the upheaval, and drivers were being referred to as paper plates by a lot of people in the industry. Not the good people in the industry still like their driver. They paid drivers, they paid them well, they treated well. They were great people to work for. I was fortunate that I worked for companies that were like that back in that day. But other companies referred to their drivers as paper plates. We're going to use this one up, we'll throw them away, we'll get another one to replace them. Not an issue. That thought process is the same one that's in use by the companies that are doing things like these cabotage, hiring the immigrant drivers that aren't qualified, that can't meet the standards. They have that same paper plate mentality that was born out of the 80s.
Tom Bray joins us this morning. Of course, it's On the Highway with Tom Bray, and based on our conversation earlier with John Maley, which we will actually get up on the tube of you, most of yesterday's conversations the day before are making their way up there now, so you can always catch up on any missed content over there. And if I hope, by the way, we had a few problems this morning, but I hope actually, Dre, we can maybe ship over to Tara the recipe that our good friend Brad Bentley actually read, the rhyming recipe.
Oh, yeah. She should have it now. I think Brad sent it over to her earlier, but should we take a call when you have a chance?
Who do we got on the phone here?
We got old Mark in Oklahoma. He has actually something to talk about.
Okay, Mark, you're in with Tom, and good morning to you, and thank you for joining us on Road Gang Radio.
Morning, Tom. Morning, Jimmy. Morning, Dre.
What's up?
Morning.
Back when I was working with a Canadian carrier before I became a legal resident down here, we had a regular run. We would run down to Cleveland, Tennessee to the Mars M&M plant, get live unloaded, deadhead over to Crossville, drop our trailer, grab a different trailer, and then come back to Canada. Now, we kept trying to tell them, says, we're repositioning the trailer. We're not reloading the same trailer. Does that not follow under the cabotage? Or is that one of those gray areas?
No, that's not cabotage. Cabotage is where you actually conduct commerce. You pick up a load and move it. That's what cabotage is.
All right. So it's like if I delivered in Cleveland, Tennessee, grabbed another load in Cleveland, Tennessee, delivered it to Crossville, then grabbed my Crossville to come back to Canada, that would be cabotage.
Yeah, that's
that
cabotage.
Part of the load going
correct
from Cleveland. Okay.
That's
so
cabotage.
Moving an empty
Correct.
trailer wasn't. Okay.
Yeah, moving an empty.
And the problem is how do you catch that? You know, that's where the challenge is now. Yep. Not nowadays. The challenge has been since the 80s. You know, how do you catch that when it happens?
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But no, that was just my example of what some of our drivers at that time thought we were sort of doing cabotage by moving the empty trailer, even though
But that's where people's heads should be at, Mark. That's in regards to that's like I said, that's not cabotage, but that's where people's heads should be at. Anybody who is doing a legitimate crossing of the border should be asking themselves the question: is what I'm doing next cabotage? They should constantly be asking themselves that question, and that way they resolve it before it becomes an issue. Do you follow me? It's not that you're not stupid for asking that question, is what I'm telling you. It's not a dumb question.
Yeah. And good companies like yours back in the day apparently asked that question, and got the answer to it. Say, okay, this is okay to do, rather than just, hey, I can make $1,000 on this move. Let's do it.
Yeah, but then again, our safety guy at that point was, you drivers are a dime a dozen anyways. You don't want to do it, I'll find someone who will.
Peak 80s. So, there you go. Peak back in the day right there, as Tom talked about. Mark, it is great to hear from you. And by the way, it's a great question by way of clarification, because I often find the best ways of kind of telling people what cabotage is what it's not. That's not cabotage.
Yeah. So that was also 20-some years ago. But on that note, I'm going to go play around some more here in some Cincinnati traffic. You guys have a great one. Catch y'all later, everybody.
Thank you, man.
Hey, enjoy the Cincinnati traffic. It's always fun.
Yeah, by the way, if you get a chance, stop and get some chili. By the way, I will tell you this, though, Tom. If you eat some of the chili in Cincinnati, what you're carrying, that's not cabotage either. All right, let's pivot here for a second. I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead.
I've got to tell you my favorite joke. The only time a big truck has gas in it, when the driver eats chili.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
I specialize in dad jokes, by the way.
Well, I mean, thank you, by the way. This bad joke, by the way, is brought to you by, but not the responsibility of, ShadyRays.com. Go to ShadyRays.com and get their lost and broken protection plan. You can also find the best in customer service. They've got your back at ShadyRays.com. I got my bad dad joke segment out of the way. Thank you very much, Tom. Let's pivot now and talk about changes, what is new and changing in the DOT world under Secretary Sean Duffy.
Yeah, as was mentioned earlier, there's a lot going on. They're moving at high speed, and they're doing a lot of things, and they're doing it well. So it's just the process has got to play out. But there's a lot there. One of the things, this is one of the things that has been around for a long time. There's certain rules I call zombie rules because they just keep coming to life and they just keep having a life of their own, even though they're not alive. One of them is the rear impact guard on trailers. And by the way, we had a big discussion. I'll ask you this: the rear bumper on a trailer, and this is kind of stuff we talk about where I work, is also known in some circles as the Mansfield bar or the Mansfield bumper. You know where that comes from?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, there is a star of Law and Order, SVU, who actually is the daughter of the woman who, in fact, it is named after. It's because of Jane Mansfield. If there had been, in fact, that rear bumper in place, Jane Mansfield might still be alive to this very day. She'd be old, but she'd be alive.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
She'd be very old. You did. And the reason I figured you would know that is because of where that happened at and the history involved. She was down in Biloxi, Mississippi, going across the Gulf Coast when the crash happened.
Yeah, it's why I have Dre call me. It's why I literally every morning have Dre call me before he leaves. I always say, just at some point when you just about around the Frank Davis Bridge or the Industrial Canal Bridge, just give me a call and let me know you're safe. Anybody taking a ride down that Biloxi Highway, I get a little nervous. Dre will back me up here. I literally send him a message every morning. Just let me know when you're on the way. I get very nervous. Mm-hmm. By the way, what is the name of the gangster that Jane Mansfield dated?
Oh,
it's a great name too.
Oh, I can't remember at the moment. I know this, but I just can't remember it.
You're gonna love this name, Johnny Stampanada.
Stampanada, yeah. Great name for somebody in that line of work.
Okay, so let's. I totally took you off course. So, AKA the rear bumper on trailers, the Mansfield bar. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's also known as the ICC bar because they're the ones that put the rule in, or the ICC bumper. The rear bumper. Where there's an issue with this is, and some drivers have encountered this, and it's kind of like you're standing there scratching your head like, okay. They do the inspection, and for a while they were writing a violation if the manufacturer's certification label wasn't on the bumper, because that requirement got carried over from the NHTSA regulations put into the FMCSA regulations. And then there was a big focus on rear bumpers because of crashes. So all of a sudden officers were told to enforce all of those rules. Well, they were writing violations if the rear bumper didn't have a label or the label was unreadable. Then CVSA got together with FMCSA and said, hey, we're not going to enforce this because this is kind of silly, and they couldn't enforce it. And then FMCSA told them, no, you have to enforce it. It's a rule. And then they came back later and said, no, you don't enforce it. You're right. It is kind of silly. And now what's happening is the new secretary and the new FMCSA leaders have said, okay, let's just get it out of there and solve this once and for all. So they put forth a rulemaking to get rid of that label requirement on an existing trailer. New trailers will still have to have it. So when it comes to you as the purchaser, it'll have that certification on there saying that, yes, this bumper meets the standards in 571. The road officers aren't going to be enforcing that label being there anymore. So this is a good thing. The net is actually zero because they're not enforcing it now, but it gets that rule out of the books. So in the future, they can't decide, okay, now we're going to start enforcing it again.
Tom, the thing is, too, is that, Marty Mangiello is, who's going to be joining us for the party on the 23rd, one of the things he specializes in doing is making the breakfast of previous presidents. And he made me think about General Grant, who gets a buckwheat and cinnamon apples breakfast. General Grant used to always say that the best solution to a bad law is either to get rid of it or enforce it to the hilt and make people want it to go away. And this is one of those cases where it's just better. If you have an unenforced law, get it off the books. If you have an unenforced regulation, get it off the books, because you never know when somebody's going to show up and just decide to start actually enforcing it, correct?
Yeah, that makes it hard on people like me that explain the regulations to people. It makes it hard on officers. It makes it hard on the people that do, investigations. Say, yeah, there's this rule, but nobody enforces it, so don't worry about it. Well, what happens when you run to somebody that does enforce it because it is there and I can use it is their logic. So get rid of it. And I love that Grant comment. Either get it out of there or enforce it so much people hate it so much that you have to get it out of there. Those are two ways. luckily we're doing it the other way on this one, where it's just get it out of there before anybody decides to use it again.
Well, yeah, and by the way, let me kind of tell our listeners, by the way, and I've never been killed by my pillows, despite the fact that I've removed every single label from them, by the way. I just want to point this out. Neither a mattress nor a pillow has ever left me dead. That is it's a miswriting of that law. Those things are there so that when you purchase them, you know you got the real deal. Once you've got it, though, it can go. That's the twisted logic that's kind of playing out there. The danger of all of this stuff, and what people don't understand, is that becomes a very easy way for law enforcement to abuse its power. And you and I have talked about this with the English proficiency stuff, too, as well, that the most important reason to get rid of it is that it sometimes gives people in individual states, it doesn't take a corrupt county sheriff long to tell people, I need you to start looking for that. Why? We can stick it to people. You think I'm kidding, but Tom, tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me that nobody's ever done anything like that.
I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. That's one of the reasons that it got changed back in 2016 was the term I like to use is over-enforcement. It was over-enforced. The driver has a heavy accent, we're going to put him out of service. I couldn't understand what he said, and I'm not going to ask him the question again in a different way, so I'm putting him out of service. It just got over-enforced. So, that's the danger when you have anything like this. You have this rule that says you have to have a label on the bumper. You're giving the officers out there that want to be that way and do that kind of stuff a tool in their toolbox to use against you.
Yeah, and by the way, I will tell you sometimes I have been around people and have had to leave the room because you realize you're having an illegal conversation where people say, "Oh yeah, man, if they won't cop to it, just bring them up on a sexual charge." And you're like, "Wait a minute." That's the thing. It's like, well, you can either take the deal for the drugs or we can get you on a sexual offender, of which you'll never escape from that. That's a he said, she said. Yeah, you get the idea, guys. It's a good thing to go away because the other problem is with it is it's often what they call a crowbar, which is a device that is used to kind of pry open everything else, to kind of open the door to begin really kind of rummaging through your Shasta. Sorry about that. Let's pivot again. You want to talk about the death of the speed limiter, shall we?
Yeah, and this is raised
the zombie.
It's one of the zombie rule. I mean, this is the rule that's been dead and alive so many times, but they haven't withdrawn it yet because the key thing is it's still out there as an active proposal. The agency said, we're not going to do anything with this. We're not going to move forward with it. And they have to get around to formally withdrawing. It's the only thing left for them to do. The problem is, and I've been around long enough, it's likely to come back in the future, but if they withdraw it, it makes it harder for it to come back next time. So that's what's going on with that one. The thing that makes me chuckle with this is I'm watching different people talk about this. One of the comments I heard, this is now going to make it illegal for your company to put a speed governor on your truck. It's like, I have no idea where that started from.
Oh, I know where that started. That started from the companies. That started from the companies in their desperate attempt. Okay, I'm going to tell you something. This is me editorializing, not Tom. This is what I think was been going on from the beginning. Just like the ELD, the speed limiter is an attempt by a number of companies actually helping them control fuel costs, good for them, helping them control their insurance rates, good for them, and then suddenly realizing that certain independent operators and certain contractors can actually run faster, can actually do the job faster and gain a competitive advantage. So wanting to remove that competitive advantage from the marketplace, they say, well, you know what, we do this, so everybody should do this. And what ends up happening is that they turn around and then say, well, if they get rid of this, we're all going to have to get rid of our speed limiters. And the truth of the matter is that's not the truth. They're not telling people they can't have speed limiters. They're simply saying we're not going to make everybody else have speed limiters just because you have them. Did I get that right?
That is correct. Yeah, because the rule basically said that all heavy trucks, 26,000, 7 and 8 classes, would have to be limited at a to be determined speed. They never did nail down what speed they were talking about. It had nothing to do with whether companies could or couldn't put a speed limiter, governor, whatever you care to call it, on their vehicles. It just has to do with setting a national standard. And that's going to be, it's pretty much gone for now, again. it might come back in the future.
Well, you know, Congress can take care of this really quickly, too, because people don't understand that the real power of this country actually lies in its Congress, not in the presidency, not in the executive branch. And if they really wanted to put an end to this, and there are efforts, by the way, in the House of Representatives and in the Senate to kind of finally put a firm, definitive end to this and say, and what Congress can do is simply say that the FMCSA has no executive branch power to enforce a speed limiter upon anybody and simply remove it from the table. But you're right, Tom. The problem is the fact that a lot of the safety advocates, God bless them, because many of those people have seen the worst that life has to offer, haven't fully grasped that most of the accidents that occur happen with orange cones around. It's speeding, but it's not speeding above what a speed limiter would limit you to, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. I always tell the story. I had a driver. We were governed at 68 miles an hour in our fleet. This is back when I was a safety person. And I had a driver that got a ticket for 30 miles an hour over the limit. When I brought that up in a safety meeting, the driver said, "How did somebody get one of our trucks going 98 miles an hour? It must have been a really big hill." I said, "No, they call it a school zone."
Bingo.
Speed for conditions is what creates the issue. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're in a construction zone and it's 45 miles an hour and you are doing 65, even if you're governed at 68, you're still doing 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. And if everybody else is actually doing the speed limit, you are a walking death trap. And there ain't no speed limiter in the world that's going to do a darn thing about it, and that's where usually bad things go down. Tom, we got to take a break here just in a moment. I want to remind people that we're on the highway with Tom Bray here on Road Gang Radio, #RGR. We are going to get some information coming your way pretty soon about the Jimmy Mac and Cheese. A little bit of brisket put on top of that as well, too. If you're not hungry already, I don't know what is wrong with you. You can give us a call, too, at 615-292-6366. Jump into the conversation. We're going to be talking about the new definition of medical treatment when we come on the other side of this. We're going to get an update on roadside inspections, how the form return process works, all kinds of other groovy stuff to talk about here. But we really want your input. We want your thoughts. As I said, Mark had a great phone call earlier asking for a point of clarification, asking for examples. If you're seeing any of this kind of enforcement or what it's going to mean to you, we would love to hear from you. Really quickly, too, to unpack the show one more time, Colin Long will be joining us at the bottom of the next hour for Washington Trucking Week, and we're going to be also having conversations in the second half of the show about what it means to do something new for the first time when you're a little bit older, as Ron Kinscherf joins us. Sam Kelly's going to be here to talk about the human history on drugs. Human history on drugs. You should check out Dre's video, by the way, he made with Madison. No drugs or illegal substances were used in the making of that video with Dre, so don't even think about it, guys. And Anthony Nally is going to be here for the RVer show. He is the executive producer and director of, he was also in charge of the Aviators. He's in charge of the RVers. We'll take a quick break here. Dre, hit that music. We'll head into the break. Road Gang Radio continues on the other side of these important messages. We'll be back with sports as well.
In a video game, if you get enough experience, you level up. And when you level up, you gain more skill. And with enough skill, you beat the boss and win the game.
Sounds a lot like trucking, doesn't it?
Except in trucking, you don't beat the boss, you become the boss. And if you want to be the boss, you gotta meet the boss.
And that boss? Carrier's Edge boss, Jane Jazrawi.
Want your drivers to level up? Carrier's Edge has the training, comprehensive safety, compliance, and best practices on one website. It's a simple subscription with no contract and no commitment. Learn more. Try it out. Level up. CarriersEdge.com.
Hey, come on! We're starting the game!
All right, I'm coming. Wait for me. CarriersEdge.com.
The Joshua Chamberlain Society is unlike any other veterans organization. It's truly a family, and I know that firsthand from working with them myself. Their mission is to make wounded veterans and families of deceased veterans feel the support and appreciation of their community for life. Our veterans' injuries are permanent, and so is the JCS support. From monetary assistance like paying utility bills or college funds to helping our heroes find purpose, JCS is a family that surrounds and supports the heroes who have sacrificed so much. Learn more and make your donation at chamberlainsociety.org. That's chamberlainsociety.org.
You know Sap Brothers will beat any competitor's advertised price on tires, so hold on to that fifth wheel, because when you buy 4 Salem S624 EFTs, the perfect line haul trailer tire, mounted at Sap Brothers, your price is an amazing $199.99, originally priced at $299.99, and prices are good through June 30, 2025 while supplies last. Save on 4 or more at Sap Brothers, and nobody's going to beat that price. Salem Tires, advanced compound technology for maximum mileage and rolling resistance without compromise. When you think tires, think Sap Brothers.
We are back with round 2 on the highway with Tom Bray on Road Gang Radio with your host, Jimmy Mack.
Hey guys, On the Highway with Tom Bray does in fact continue here, but before I get this sports report is brought to you by ShadyRays.com. Cut down on the glare of the hype with Shady Rays, lost and broken protection game plans. Their custom service and their knowledge, like a good major league team, is first rate. After all, they've got your back at ShadyRays.com. Tom, I kid you not, as soon as the bat made contact with the sinker, everybody in Kauffman Stadium knew what had happened. Jacques Cagliano, rookie for the Kansas City Royals, in the 4th inning, hit a 2-run home run. It cleared 3 fences, and at 566 feet was the longest home run ever for a rookie. Cags, which is his nickname, by the way, hit a second one as well. Kansas City 4, Pittsburgh 3. He, in fact, made the difference. On this day in 1937, Joe DiMaggio hit for the cycle for the first time and became, in doing so, became one of the only men to become eventually a guy who hit for the cycle twice. In 1956, the Cy Young Award was established on this day because Ford Frick, the commissioner of baseball, thought that pitchers were not getting enough attention when it came to the MVP award. And this is the anniversary, by the way, of Tom Seaver's, the Mets' Tom Seaver's, imperfect, perfect game in 1969. He would lose it on the final batter. He would lose it to Jim Quallis, a rookie with a .223 batting average. Oh, my God. So close.
Which,
go ahead.
I would say, which is brought into Kevin Costner for the love of the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that connection at the end.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
they altered history in that movie, but they brought that part of it in.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it's called The Imperfect Game because he pitched a gem. And as a matter of fact, there was a lot of discussion of whether to declare that the hit an error. And they decided against it, and Seaver at the end said, he goes, it still would have just been a no-hitter as opposed to a perfect game. So he said, what's it matter at that point? Absolutely correct. Welcome back to Tom Bray. I don't know if you know this. A guy said this is the craziest Guinness World Record I've ever heard in my life. He rode a motorcycle for 1,450 feet while on fire. Congratulations to him. I suppose. There are times when I think the FMCSA, by the way, is actually riding a motorcycle while on fire, and it's what we're talking about here. Some big changes coming over at the DOT that we're kind of talking about, and some phone calls arriving as well. Before we actually get to the next point we're going to talk about here with Tom Bray, what do you say we bring Showtime in on the phone? We got him. Let's get him in. Good morning, Showtime.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Interesting morning. Doing good. Good show.
That it is. Question for Tom. On ELDs, are they not supposed to be recording speed also?
No, that's not a requirement. The ELD basically captures the same thing as a paper log. In the background, what it catches as far as verification data are engine hours, total miles, elapsed miles, I guess is the right way to put it. I don't know if elapsed is the right word. Having word trouble. But elapsed mileage. So it's just getting that information to verify the vehicle's moving and how far it's moved. It doesn't track speed. So that's one of the things that's just, a lot of companies have that as an option, which creates the confusion.
Okay, I was just wondering. Our company does. I'm just asking because I'm here in California right now, and I'm setting my cruise at 59, and I'm out here getting run over. So I didn't know if these companies were recording them. If they're just letting their drivers, stay in violation like that. But thing is, you can track through phones and other things how fast they're going.
And you can get an average speed, too. You can figure out the average speed based on what the ELD has kind of covered, too. That's a little bit more of a complicated process. By the way, Showtime, before you go any further, tell Tom what the temperature was in Coachella.
Yesterday at 5:06 p.m. in Coachella, it was 121 degrees.
Been there, done that. I picked up loads in a place called Trona, California, which is right next to Death Valley. So yeah, I've had the pleasure of enjoying summertime in that part of the world.
Oh yeah. Well, I transport cars in enclosed trailers, so we do for testing also. And last summer we were out in Maricopa, Arizona, unloading, and it was like 120. And inside my trailer it was probably over 140 degrees.
No doubt. That's one of those things when they invented the fiberglass roofs that seemed like such a good idea at the time, until you had to unload in the desert Southwest during the summer.
Well, but here's the other problem. You're loading vehicles that have been sitting out in the sun all day. So you're just loading ovens that are with a door open.
Yeah, I was going to ask. It's a deadly serious question. If you cracked an egg on any of those hoods, would it light it up?
Yeah, I'd probably just instantly cook it. I mean, literally, you have to be careful. I have to go in and out of the windows, so I put my arms against the car. You have to watch so you don't burn your arms.
Ooh, man, that is blisteringly hot. By the way, just to let you both know, Chowder just wrote, I say get rid of most of the speed regs, tech sensors, and hours of service and let natural selection take over. Beach Bum responded by saying, we know that won't work, but I like the way you think. Good morning, sir.
Yeah. We have those because we had people doing that before. That was the problem.
Yeah. And the problem is about natural selection is that all natural selection means is adaptability. It doesn't mean you're a good guy. It just means you somehow survived. You figured out a way to get through the loophole. That's all it means. Right. Where are you headed today, Showtime?
I'm headed over to Arizona to my yard to get some service work done. Also when you're talking about the cabotage and stuff about companies coming in and moving and that stuff, another thing they need to look into, and I found this out a couple of years ago. I had a carrier picking up at an auction that I was at, and the guy couldn't speak English or anything. So I looked up his DOT numbers. The DOT number was registered in one state, and the mailing address, it's registered in Kentucky, but the mailing address is Florida. Doesn't that seem suspicious?
No, it seems
it would be something. Go ahead.
I'm not being glib. It doesn't seem suspicious. It seems typical. I will tell you the number of times.
The company's not following the rules.
Yeah, the number of
That's
times.
how they get around it.
Yeah, the number of times we have tried to track down companies over here and found ourselves in a strip mall in Florida or a strip mall in California, states away from the actual location of the company, it's staggering to me. Post office boxes, all kinds of stuff like that. And
right. Well,
go ahead.
There's the ghost companies in California that they've just found an address. There's 700 companies registered out of one address. 500 of them have the same email and phone number.
I'm just
have
going to
you
let
seen
that,
Tom?
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
And
some of it's I'm going to say this, and I don't mean it legally, but some of it's actually legitimate. Where it's a one truck owner operator. He's running it through a mail center. So there's times where it's not correct, I guess is the way to put it. But you can understand why the person did it, So that's where you run into trouble with that stuff, is now sorting out who's gaming the system versus who's just doing this, for lack of a better term, for convenience or because it's the way they need to do it. So that's where it gets kind of difficult when you start sorting through that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and
if there's certain things that trigger you, like you said, hundreds of companies being run through the same address. That's right up there with a medical examiner doing 100 physicals a day. There's certain things you look at and you say, that's just not right.
That's not right. And by the way, the problem with a regulatory state, if you have nobody to enforce the regulations, all you have is chaos. Showtime, thank you for the call. Speaking of medical conditions, we're going to pivot to that. Thank you, sir. Be safe.
You guys have a good day. Be careful.
All right, man.
You too.
You actually brought up the 100. You brought up the doing 100 people in a day. Which, by the way, unless you're in the Army, and by the way, I know Army doctors that couldn't cover that many people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that basically sounds like you're engaged in a draft. And by the way, nobody realizes this. It's a lot easier to do those kind of inspections when everybody is 18 to 20 years old and in pretty good health, and you're looking to spot the outliers. It ain't the same thing when it's a bunch of guys between 45 and 60. You've got to actually go through all their medical conditions. Talk about what's different about the new definition of medical treatment.
Yeah, this kind of is in a different area, but after a crash, one of the things that makes it a DOT reportable is if any of the people involved suffered injury that required immediate treatment away from the scene. Well, in the background, they have an interpretation that says evaluation is not treatment. So if my ambulance crew shows up, evaluates the driver, hauls them in, the emergency room just looks them over and takes a couple x-rays, pokes in a couple of places, says, "You're fine, get out of here." That person was evaluated, they were never treated. They have an interpretation that explains that, but they want to put it in the rules, which is a good thing because that makes it easy for everybody to see. Right now, it's kind of tricky figuring that out, unless you know it because you know it, or you know exactly where to look when it comes to the different things that FMCSA has out there, like FAQs and interpretations and different things. They just want to put it right in the rules so it's easy for everybody to find.
Yeah, and by the way, there is, like I said, there are people who often think I'm too critical of this administration or the previous administration. By the way, I feel like if I'm getting comments from people about how critical I was of the previous one or this one, I feel like I'm doing my job to a degree. I do feel like there's a lot of stuff in this new DOT reality that does make a lot of common sense. And I'm hoping they can apply some of the lessons here to other aspects of the federal government. I want to pivot because in some ways it's not the same, but it has the same sort of common sense with the sticker, the idea of you don't need to have the sticker on, making things clearer. Talk about the roadside inspection form return process. I think this makes a lot of sense. If you don't agree, please tell me. I'll take your word for it.
Oh, I agree 100% because what's going on, some of the states don't want the forms returned. They're going to take the carrier's word for it. You're going to fix it. Other states want it returned because they have a verification process they want to go through and check the box and say, yes, we told them that was broke. They sent us something back saying they fixed it. What FMCSA wants to do is, since we have states that want to do different things, let's just put that in the rules. States can do what they want to do when it comes to this. And it's another one of those, it's kind of like that evaluate versus treatment. It's just, let's put in the rules what's going on, because that's what states are currently doing. Let's just put that in the rules so it ends the confusion. My advice to carriers with this is always just send it back to the state. If they don't want it, they can shred it in their office. This will eliminate the whole mess. It's like, right on the form, it'll say whether or not they want it returned or they don't want it returned, and then you just follow that instruction.
Yeah, and by the way, having you simply articulate it like that, you kind of go, you know what, that makes sense. That's kind of a good way to handle it. Let's just kind of, not be draconian. Let people kind of make their own decisions. Let them kind of give them a little flexibility on the issue as well. This is something else I think is terrific because it feels like one of those other things that opens the door. Although I think people should carry it, I don't think they need to be mandated to carry it. Eliminate the need to carry the ELD user manual. Talk about that. I'd like to get your opinion on it as well, too.
Oh, I'll start off by saying, which is what I was going to start off by saying, I don't know any driver that's actually read their ELD user manual. I mean, we used electronic logs where I was at previously. I don't know of any driver that read their manual. That's just, they just don't. They have their cheat cards. They have their cheat sheets. They have the training that somebody's done with them. This is how you make it do this. This is how you make it do that. So having the driver carry it was always kind of an odd thing. It's already on file with FMCSA, so if it's a matter that an officer or investigator wants to read it for some reason, it's publicly available. So it just didn't really make sense. The one thing they did, though, is you're allowed to carry it electronically, and a lot of drivers don't know this, but a lot of times your ELD manual is right in your ELD. It's a PDF that's loaded in there that you can access and show an officer if they ask for it. So, it's kind of a weird thing where there's only about 7,200 violations a year written, but as you put it, it's one of those things that opens the door. It's a violation that a carrier has to deal with for basically no purpose. So, that's where, just get it out of there. It's not doing anybody any good. Nobody can really point to a reason I need it in there because. So what's it doing there?
Yeah, and by the way, you point out that it's about 7,200 violations per year out of 1 million driver violations. I do want to point out the fact that you say, well, why is this an issue? Because those violations often set into motion the violations that often follow in after that kind of plays. And look, I know that law enforcement is looking for tools to kind of get their foot in the door, that crowbar as I talk about. But this is one of those things, too, where one of the discussions, and the reason why, maybe it puts you and I out of a job, but one of the reasons we have this segment is I don't feel like, Dave doesn't feel like, I know you over at J.J. Keller don't feel like, that the DOT does an effective job from a PR perspective. And when I say PR, guys, I mean public service announcement perspective, of really giving the drivers the information they need in a very, very concise and accessible way. This is the kind of thing, like the idea of carrying the ELD manual electronically is the kind of thing that, you can get to carriers, you can put on your website, you can put in video form, and you can really push that out there. I think a lot of what fails the DOT and a lot of what fails the FMCSA is they really don't do a good job getting the message out. And say what you want, no matter where you stand on this administration, the whole purpose and point of that 9-point thing that we're talking about today is to actually bring a little bit more clarity, because so much of what you and I deal with on the show on a regular basis is keeping things clear, is making sure people understand what's going on. Maybe it puts us out of a job, Tom, but God almighty, we do want safer highways and safer roads. We got two phone calls coming in, but go ahead and make your comment first and we'll get the calls in.
Do it, Tom.
No, I was going to say, you're talking about the crowbar effect. Well, the problem with this violation is this comes into your CSA scores as a carrier. Okay, now you get a bunch of these, suddenly your hours of service compliance basic gets out of whack. Next thing you know, because your hours of service compliance basic is out of whack, you're dealing with a warning letter, a focused investigation, or outright, compliance review or audit, as people like to call it. So that's where these violations, whether it's, some of the other ones we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about spare fuses and different things. It's like that, the violation itself really isn't a big thing, but where it gets you is a big thing.
Yeah, and I always call it's the beginning of the death by 1,000 violations. I mean, that really is kind of the way the game is played, and the idea is, basically, and I understand the logic behind it. Like, well, if they didn't do that, what else haven't they done? How much other diligence haven't they engaged in? I get the argument, but there is a point where you have to say, man, at some point, that document falls apart. I mean, I got to tell you, I have a Bluetooth speaker that we use in the morning to listen to music before we start the show. I don't have that. I don't have that user manual. That thing went in the garbage almost instantly. I know how to use it. I don't need that Shasta. First phone call, Dre. Who we got?
Oh, we got old Bandit in Ohio. He wants to talk on ELDs, my friend.
ELD Bandit, you're in the conversation. Tell Tom good morning.
Hey guys. Well, funny that you guys said that no one ever reads those manuals. I actually read the one for the ELD that I've got, just because I'm a nerd like that.
That's okay. By the way, I got to tell you, there are ELDs. There are manuals that I've read. I got to tell you, I read my PlayStation 5 manual backwards and forwards because I wanted to watch my movies in the way I wanted to watch them. I wanted to set the whole enchilada up. There are reasons to read it, but the thing is the fact that, but to carry it with you, I mean, where do you carry it, and does it fall apart? I mean, it becomes like, really? Okay.
Yeah. The one that we have is actually on being ran through a Samsung tablet, and it's got a button on there where you can pull the manual up right there on it, so you don't have to have the physical manual. It's right there on the ELD software.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's common nowadays. So that's one of the things about that violation that's weird is a lot of the drivers had the manual. They just didn't know they had it, because it was tucked in there electronically.
Yeah. As far as some of the other things, when I had my business, the state DOT came out to my house to do the 90-day safety audit because I was running it out of the house for the new entrant audit. So how are these guys not having to go through that? Or because when I did everything, it was all you had to be running out of the same physical address for the company and everything.
Well, that 6-month to 18-month audit is where they're supposed to catch that. But the infamous tactic that's being used is they fold that company up, shut it down, and then just start another one. So, they just are in a perpetual state of getting a new DOT number, so they never actually make it to the point of getting that new entrant audit where they would come to your facility, your principal place of business. The other issue that's going on is they flipped over, and a lot of the new entrants are being done remotely. They're being done as what's called an off-site audit. So the investigator's not actually coming out to the company's business. So there's a couple different things going on there. So, but yeah, that would address a lot of the issues if they were done live and in person at the company's site, and they actually got to do it. The company didn't fold and go away before they had a chance to do it.
Yeah, I know this seems like it'd be a lot more of a hassle to do it, but wouldn't it help cut some of this nonsense down if they did like a 45-day audit and then did a 90-day audit and catch these guys a little quicker that way?
Yeah, that's one of the debates that's been going on for many, many years, is the approach they're using of waiting until, 90 days, 6 months, out to 18 months to do that initial audit, the way to do it. Should we be doing it earlier? Should we be doing something up front? The problem is that they want to see records. They want to see how the company is operating, what they're actually doing. And if they've only been running for a couple of weeks, they don't have any records yet. So there's a whole big discussion and argument that's been going on for years about how to handle that. And I'm kind of one, like, it would double the workload, but it'd be nice to touch them at the beginning, and it'd be nice to come back and get them at the 18 months again, so. But here again, you're doubling the workload on the people that have to do this, which is going to be tough.
Oh, wait, that's always, and I have to tell you, more often than not, Bandit, the biggest issue with all of this stuff is, do we have actually the proper number of people to actually play the enforcement mechanism game, which is why they give them a lot of easy stuff to kind of ding people on, because at least it then justifies the next couple of steps that happen there. Bandit, I got to float you. We got some other stuff to cover, and I got another phone caller coming in. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, not a problem, guys. Take it easy.
Let's talk before we get to our last phone call of this segment about the remove the spare fuse requirement.
Yeah, we touched on that just a second ago. Yeah. That's one of those that most CMVs nowadays use breakers. And the other thing is every convenience store now has fuses. I mean, you've got the risk of running down the road with no lights or no wipers if you're, in a smaller CMV in particular where they still do use fuses. Your hot shots and things along those lines. But you can buy a fuse anywhere. I mean, it's not like it was, back in the, 1930s where, boy, if you didn't have a fuse, you were running the rest of the night and well into the next week before you had a chance to buy one. So it's something it's one of those, and there's a lot out there. Hopefully they look and find more that are they're based on presumptions that were made 30, 40, 50, 80 years ago. So it's nice to see that they're going after some of those old ones that just don't seem to make sense anymore.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Tom, I'm beginning to believe in my heart that rather than looking at making new rules or new regulations, they should simply have this review where they go through all the stuff that exists on the books and say what needs to go, what needs to be upgraded, and say, let's see how long we can go without coming up with new rules and regulations, and just either fix or eliminate the ones that are already on the books. I hate to sound so simple, but do you sometimes feel like doing that on a yearly basis still gives everybody the work they need and a chance to become editors as opposed to writers, which makes me crazy? I want to write something and put my mark on things. No, how about you just fix what's already there?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the FMCSA has been trying to do that for, as long as I've been doing my job I have here. But they just never seem to actually be able to make a dent, and get this done. They say we're going to review this regulation part and we're going to review these interpretations this year. Well, then this happens, that happens. They just get out of control with other things, other things get out of control on them, and they just don't seem to get it done. So that's where it's nice. They're actually, things are moving a little bit now, and at least they're getting some of this stuff done. And the next thing that was on our list to talk about was adding the railroad crossings, because that's another one of those rules that's based on back in the day when railroad crossings were not reliable as far as the active warning systems, the gates, the lights. So the assumption was the drivers got to be prepared for ones that don't work. So we're going to make drivers hauling hazmat and passengers stop for them just to make sure. Well, now, there's numbers out there. We can prove these things are reliable. They don't have issues with them not working. So let's take a look at that regulation. Let's change it. Another one that we have on the list is EDVIRs, which they passed a rule a while back saying you can use electronic documents. But the DVIR one uses the word written, and, there's just different things that people have in their mind. It's like, no, it's got to be on paper. No, it doesn't. It can be electronic. Let's put a rule. This is a case where they're putting a rule in or making a change to a rule. I like your word editing. They're editing a rule to make it clear that, no, that's fine. You can have that electronically. So it's good they're moving this stuff forward. They're trying, and they've been trying for years. It's good to see some of it actually go in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, and I've really got a basic way to kind of put this as we bring our last phone caller in. It's such a simple thing. If you're going to impose an ELD on people, and by the way, there's a lot of debate on both sides of that issue, if you're going to impose electronic logging on people, then let's eliminate some of the need for written and paper documentation from people as well, too. If we're going to make them play by that rule, let's kind of give them a break on the other set of the rules and not have to have so much paper documentation every minute of the day. We got one more phone call. Who is it, Dre?
Oh, 100%. We got old Chowder, man. You know where he's at. He's in South Dakota, and he wants to talk about those hours of service rule change.
All right, you got about 2.5 minutes, Chowder. You and Tom, go at it.
Do it.
I don't know if 2.5 minutes can be long enough, but anyway, hey, good morning, Tom, Mr. Bray. Good to hear you on again. I've been wanting to float this idea past you, because as we found out through the world... as we found out through the world of YouTube, of tubes of you, Chowder has a different take on hours of service. But so as I call it, the Chowdified version of natural selection hour of service, I hear there's a rumor that Mr. Secretary Duffy would like to float a pilot program that's going to give us a 6-4-5-5. Now, in my rough Northeast Maine mathematicianal lack of ability, that would mean we now would have a 7-3, an 8-2, a 6-4, and a 5-5, and you can reverse those numbers if you care to, which means the only one we're missing is a 1-9 and a 9-1, right? So why don't we just go? I know this is a little radical, so please hold on, but why don't we just go to heck back to how we used to do it, kind of on paper, only with an electric log, which we have the Samsara that all we do is the log on it, nothing else. Why don't we just kind of, use a little common sense there, and I don't mean the gas station that's owned by Exxon either. And why don't we just say that we have two rules, 14 hours driving, 10 hours off duty, use them how you want. We can clear up the PC idea that nobody really understands, or the yard movement. If the truck's moving, you're driving, and if it's not moving, you're off duty. Make it easy on anybody. The math can be done without a calculator, and we do some, personal responsibility. What's the problem with that?
Well, the problem that you have, and it's human nature, and it's the different things kick in. If you make a flexible and soft rule that allows all kinds of things, there are going to be people that are going to use it to the max, and you're going to have fatigue driving going on, and you're going to have all these other bad things that come with it. That's the concern. That's the worry. And sadly, that's why there's the hours of service regulations, because some people don't have the common sense.
It's people. It's people, Chowder. And they, what's wrong with history? People. That's it. That's it.
Big squishy things called people.
But here's the problem with that. So they say you can't cheat this logbook. Well, hello, if you use PC right and you have a company that doesn't have a limited time and distance on it, unless they catch you doing it and audit you within 8 days, they don't find it. So it's really not solving that problem. If you, as a driver, don't have the grapefruits to put on the dash and tell your dispatch, hey, I'm tired, I need to stop, then you deserve whatever financial reward you get for any damage or others you do that puts you out of business.
All right, Chowder, I'm going to cut you off right there. Not because I'm angry. You're doing great. We're out of time. By the way, the grapefruits is my favorite.
I'd love to have this discussion. So.
Yeah, we should have this discussion. Next time Tom's on, Chowder, you just give us a call. We'll jump into that. Hey, Tom, also, I want to bring you on in the second half of the show sometime down the line. So when you finish Andor, you and I can talk about transportation concepts in the first 3 Star Wars and in the Andor and Rogue One series, because they actually get all the freight moving in that right. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Let's say, hey, logistics. That's the ultimate logistics right there.
By the way, are you enjoying season 2?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Well, we're running out of time, but the intrigue. I can see where some people have said they didn't care for the second season because it's not as exciting, but the intrigue is what I love about it, and the subtext and what's going on underneath. I just get a big kick out of it.
By the way, Tom, I have friends everywhere. Is all I will tell you. Thank you so much, Tom Bray, for being on the highway with us this morning. The fella from J.J. Keller has arrived lean and mean and on the scene. Tom, we will talk at you next month, if not sooner.
Sounds great.